true indeed with you. Holy Circle Gaming. Thank you for rocking with your boy. Like always, definitely a privilege and an honor to do as such. I know it's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you without some content to step to. Yeah, that's true. But what we're going to do, we're going to get some more content up for you. I got a lot of projects I'm working on slowly but surely. But I wanted to go back into a series that I call Top 5, breaking down myself's and my friends' personal top 5. What that means is the top 5 games that if you had to have it in your arsenal, you could play constantly without no flaws, without no qualms, without no issues with it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to break down my boy's Christian's top 5 games of all time. I got a couple of honorable mentions that he's going to have in it as well. So we're going to definitely get into that. But we're going to start that new content coming today. So if you ready, I'm ready for the circle. Let's go ahead and get into it. For Christian's honorable mention game, his first one that he mentioned was Heavy Rain. Now, ironically, when I think about Heavy Rain, it's kind of a unique title because it's not your typical shooter. It's very story driven. It's a lot of good things about this game. I believe this game is done by Quantum. That's the team that does this game. It's really featured on the PlayStation. So if you didn't necessarily have a PlayStation, you wouldn't have necessarily been able to play Heavy Rain. But Heavy Rain is actually a pretty good honorable mention, to be honest with you. Because Heavy Rain, you know, if you really like stories and you like the little choose your own adventure style of gameplay, this is really right up your alley. I think the really tricky thing about this is that with Heavy Rain, you know, it's really slow, it's really paced, it has a few driving elements, not really like your Fear Factor, but very suspenseful. It's like watching a very good drama movie. So it's actually a very good game in that premise, and because you have the choose your own adventure style, you have the ability to actually, you know, take your own path, make your own decisions, and your decisions directly affect the nature of the game and the ending that you so happen to get. So it's actually a very good game in that regard. So I don't really have a knock against it. I wouldn't necessarily put it in my top 5 per se, but I would put a game like this, Detroit Become Human. This game right here is actually really good as well. Story driven, made by the same team, but a little bit better content. I really like this game as well because I think it's a little bit more detailed in what it does. And then also Life is Strange. Kind of in the same vein, different team, very story driven. So if I had 2 recommendations, those would be the recommendations of games that I would suggest as opposed to Heavy Rain. But Heavy Rain is not bad. Good choice to start off with. Now, when breaking down this game, Breath of the Wild, you know, it's really hard to say because most people will tell you Breath of the Wild is probably the best game that's been launched on the Switch so far. Is it a great game? The answer to that question is yes. I didn't really dive really heavy into the game, but Legend of Zelda is one of those top flight Nintendo games that people really dove into. You got a whole bunch of Zelda fans who are really, you know, hyped and gassed about this game. They drop in hours upon hours. I had people drop in a minimum of 150 hours, upwards to 400 hours, just trying to knock out this game. This game is very good. You know, your classic action adventure RPG style gameplay. But for me, you know, I wouldn't necessarily put it in my top 5 because I'm not like completely gassed on the Nintendo franchise, even though Zelda is one of those games. But if you told me to choose a Zelda game, I would definitely choose Ocarina of Time first and foremost, because I still figure that Ocarina of Time is still considered to be the top 5 game of all time. I would definitely go in that form of fashion. But even then, you know, back in the day, you know, I also played another Zelda game, which was the original Legend of Zelda. So personally, if you told me to make a choice, I would take the original gold cover Legend of Zelda. That would be the game that I would personally choose. And if it wasn't that, I would take Ocarina of Time, because I think Ocarina of Time is definitely better than the Breath of the Wild. But that's not to say Breath of the Wild is a bad choice. I could definitely see it as an honorable mention because you could definitely sink a lot of hours into any of those games. But definitely, personally, I would take this one, the old school OG Legend of Zelda, the classic one, the gold cover, the gold cartridge one. If you have that one, kudos to you. Now, when Cristian mentioned this game in his honorable mention, it kind of got me scratching my head a little bit, because I ain't heard nobody pick SOCOM, just the series. I put SOCOM 3 in the picture, but really just SOCOM in general as in an honorable mention of games that you would play. First of all, this game you can't even play anymore. I haven't seen nobody even fire up the SOCOM. The servers are down. All that stuff is all bad. Don't get it wrong. SOCOM back in the day was one of those premier team-based shooters. Really good, really fun to play. Before you really got a chance into all these other shooters that you could get your hands on. I believe this one was in third person as opposed to first person. But it was a pretty fire game for what it was back at that time. But I don't know how you would put this in your honorable mention, because you can't really even play the game anymore. But when it comes to shooters, first and foremost, above anything else, we gotta talk about Call of Duty. Call of Duty, of course. You know, whether you're playing Modern Warfare, whether you're playing Black Ops, whatever it so happens to be, when it comes to shooting games in particular, especially first-person shooters, 9 times out of 10, the buy-all, end-all, what you're really going to be playing is Call of Duty 9 times out of 10. Especially the new Modern Warfare is actually pretty fun. You know, all the classic game modes. If you actually like Black Ops, as opposed, if you're playing the alpha right now, you know, you already know that the games are really fire, really fun, great multiplayer. In addition to, it has a great single player campaign that's attached to most of the Call of Duty series. SOCOM, to my knowledge, didn't even have a story mode attached to it. It was basically just third person combat. So to me, I would have chose Call of Duty as opposed to SOCOM, but I ain't mad at SOCOM. It's just a unique choice. But you really can't play the game anymore. So I don't know, you kind of have to throw that one somewhere, maybe throw that one in rice, maybe play some Call of Duty, maybe some Destiny 2, one of those. That would be one of my choices I would pick on. Now, in Cristian's top 5, one of the first games that he mentioned was Super Mario Sunshine. Now, I'm not even mad at necessarily Super Mario Sunshine, because it's actually, as far as like a platforming game, it's actually a very good platforming game. I'm not going to front. If you told me to choose between like any of the Mario games, I got a couple of ideas for you, but it's definitely not a bad choice. You know, very good, very detailed, enough challenge to Super Mario Sunshine where it actually will make it worth the gameplay. I know a lot of people have sunk a lot of hours into Super Mario Sunshine as far as like a platforming game. I believe, I don't know if that was on the Super Nintendo or the GameCube. I don't remember which console it was off the top of my head, but it was definitely a pretty good game to jump into. But if you told me which game I would actually choose as opposed to it, first and foremost, I would tell you Little Big Planet. Now, Little Big Planet is every bit of the platform, probably the Mario killer 9 times out of 10, because it gave you all the elements of a platforming game, but it also gave you the ability to create your own levels and play other people's created levels. So to me, when it comes to the premier platforming game, Little Big Planet actually is a click better than Mario Sunshine and all the other ones. That's the reason why it gets you to this game, Super Mario Maker. And the reason why I said if you told me to choose a Mario game, it would be Super Mario Maker, because it's basically Little Big Planet in the Mario variation of it. Get a chance to create levels, get a chance to, you know, play other people's created levels. It's basically Little Big Planet in a Mario form. That would have been my choice, but I'm not mad at Super Mario Sunshine. It's definitely a great platforming game, but Little Big Planet, Mario Maker is my choice first. Now, his next choice that he has is Pokemon. Now, you know what's crazy about Pokemon? I think I mentioned this in some of my previous top 5s that some other people have done. You know, Pokemon is really one of those games where you're either going to love it, or you're going to hate it, or you're not going to play it. You know, to me, Pokemon wasn't my type of game, to be honest with you. I know it's an RPG, it was pretty cool, but I wasn't really a Nintendo person like that. I mean, yes, I had Nintendo consoles from time to time, but I really didn't play a lot of Pokemon. But the people who really were into Nintendo, lived and died off of Pokemon. So I understand why. A lot of people who are a little bit younger than me, in their 20s, early 30s, I'm a little bit older than that, Pokemon is more their style of game, more so than like the OG gamers like me style of game. Not to say that I wouldn't necessarily hate it or anything like that. It's just not really me. I wasn't really into the Pikachus and the Squirtles and the Mewtwo's and all that stuff. I didn't really watch the cartoon or anything like that. I didn't really get into the card game like that. There was other card games I played. Shout out to Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone and some of the other card games out there. It's just, for me, Pokemon really wasn't that type of game. It was a little bit too cartoony, a little bit too cutesy. It wasn't really my type of game. I'm not saying that it's bad. I did play a little bit of it. I just really couldn't dive into it. But I know the people who do play it, and I know like Cristian, he plays, people have sunk hours upon hours upon hours upon cartridge upon cartridge upon cartridge upon this Pokemon game. And it's understandable. It's just, me personally, I wouldn't choose it, but it's definitely not a bad choice because you could definitely sink a lot of hours into Pokemon if needed be. So Christian's next choice in his personal top 5 is Star Wars: The Old Republic. Now, when he told me The Old Republic, I had to make sure I heard it right. I was like, The Old Republic? He was like, yeah, The Old Republic. Star Wars: The Old Republic. I was like, yeah. He was like, yeah, Star Wars: The Old Republic. Alright, bet, got you. The MMO. Alright, cool. The MMO was actually pretty solid. Gave you a chance to create your own Jedi Knight or Sith Lord, whatever it may be. You go out and do a whole bunch of missions in an MMO style format. Actually, it's a really good MMO. You actually could sink a lot of time, just like any other MMO. You could definitely sink a lot of hours and a lot of time into it. It's just, he's the first person who actually mentioned the Old Republic out of all the MMOs that you could have chose from. And there's plenty to go around to choose from. But the reason why he chose it was because of he liked the game an awful lot. Now, to me, I would have chose this game, Knights of the Old Republic. The BioWare, action RPG, the hack and slash. I would have got down with that game. If not that game, I would have got with this game, Star Wars: The Old Republic. Both of those I would consider two of the best Star Wars games ever made. Knights and Battlefront. Not necessarily the MMO Old Republic, but if you told me to choose an MMO, the MMO I actually been dropping a lot of time in is Elder Scrolls. Probably a little bit more complete, better storyline, always expanding, a little bit more sorcery. I really like Elder Scrolls as opposed to any other MMO. That's no knock against World of Warcraft or some other MMOs. This has just been my personal MMO of choice. But if you told me to choose, those would be the 3 that I would choose. But the Old Republic's definitely not a bad choice either. Now, his next choice was Monster Hunter. Now, he didn't have a real preference when it came to which Monster Hunter game it was. He just liked the series Monster Hunter. And I'm not really mad at that at all. Kind of like another MMO-ish type game. You take on a squad of people. You go out, hunt some beasts, hunt some creatures. Take some of their skills and some of their body parts or whatever it may be. Create weapons. Go out and do it again. As you go to different tiers, it gets harder. I'm definitely not mad at the choice. It's just kind of a weird choice. I don't really have too much to say about it because it hasn't been a game I really dove a whole bunch of time into. But it's definitely not a bad choice at all. So I could definitely understand and see why Monster Hunter would be, because it's definitely a good, fun game to be played with a bunch of people, and you could definitely sink a lot of time into it. But if you told me as a single player person what game that I would choose, I would actually choose Shadow of the Colossus. Kind of in a similar premise. You go out, you're a character, you go slay some beasts, but a little bit harder as far as like Shadow of the Colossus, because it was all boss battles. Shadow of the Colossus is probably considered one of the top 10 hardest games to beat, somewhere in that bracket. So me personally, I probably would have went with Shadow of the Colossus as opposed to Monster Hunter, but I'm not mad at Monster Hunter at all. It's actually a pretty good game, especially if you're going to play with multiple people. But for me, a lot of times I'm playing single player games, so I probably would rock with Shadow of the Colossus as opposed. But I can see Monster Hunter, especially if you're playing it on like the DS, and especially the new Monster Hunter World. Definitely a pretty fire game. A lot of people dropped a lot of time, and with the updates, that's been pretty good. But me personally, Shadow of the Colossus would have been my choice as far as like a better game, but not a bad choice for Monster Hunter. Then lastly, rounding out Christian's top 5 is League of Legends. Now, I understand League of Legends is the juggernaut. You play with a team of people. You got a bunch of characters, over 100, maybe almost close to 2. Definitely a great game. My only knock against League of Legends is that the game in its original premise is basically the same game over and over and over again. Now, don't get it wrong. I do play League of Legends too. My character is Sivir. I run with a Sivir. I run with Misfortune. Those are the 2 characters I kind of rock with. But you know, I can understand League of Legends, especially if you've been playing since its inception. It's one of those games you could jump into, jump out of, jump right back into. The games, even though in premise is exactly the same, but the way that you play it when you're playing with different people all the time, or even playing with the same people, no 2 games are played exactly alike. But if you told me what I do play as opposed to, I play Teamfight Tactics. Don't get it wrong. I like Teamfight Tactics a lot, which is basically a spin off of League of Legends. Dota 2, probably in the same vein as League of Legends. That is definitely a great game as well. If you like kind of that hybrid MMO RPG, you know, not necessarily MMO, excuse me, RPG action elements. Both of those are pretty fire games in its own right. So those would be a couple of games that would be alternatives too. But the game that I normally play as opposed to would be Smite. Now that's the game I actually sunk a lot of time into that is similar to League of Legends. I know it's not necessarily better. That's just the game I dropped a lot of time into. So, what did I learn from Christian's top 5? Real simple. He likes multiplayer games, playing with a bunch of people. That's the first thing I learned. The second thing I learned from his list was he is a Nintendo fanboy because he likes a lot of Nintendo games, and like a lot of people who actually started off with Nintendo consoles, they actually pick a lot of games that are Nintendo based. He does have a wide variety when it comes to styles of game, but he's primarily one of those RPG type of players where he likes characters that are being built and then go out and play and create a character or have a character that you build upon. He likes those type of games. So those are the kind of the things that I learned in evaluating and breaking down his particular list. It is a very interesting list, especially in his honorable mentions, like hearing like a SOCOM, a Heavy Rain, games like that. You know, those type games are very interesting because those are not games that you typically would see in people's top 5 or even in their honorable mentions. There's a lot of other games that I would see or project in other people's 5s that will break down, that will be more typical game choices. But definitely a good list. Shout out to my boy Christian. Appreciate you dropping me the list. So we're going to keep continuing this list. I got some other lists we're going to be breaking down. So if you have your list, if you have your top 5 games plus a couple of honorable mentions, definitely put it in the comments below. I will definitely break them down and tell you the goods and bads of behind each list and how I would think and feel behind it. But definitely I'm getting back into your mix. So definitely appreciate you rocking with your boy. You know who I am. I'm Mr. True Indeed, of course. You know who I represent. It's the Holy Circle Gaming. Like always, it's God above everything. Till the next time, family, we do it again soon. Salute.